I think it was ChatGPT 4.0, and all of a sudden you have reasoning as an agentic behavior. That changes everything. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And all the implications of what happens when agents, behave like human beings and can think and can create strategies and can solve relatively complex problems. So that was for me the big aha moment. And when I raised the pre-seed, I didn't have a solution for how we're gonna implement Paid in such a way that it can capture the value of what the agent is doing and monetize it correctly. All I knew was that the systems currently were not gonna solve it. We had a technical problem with a market that was, in my mind, set and ready to go. So whenever I see that, that's the kind of opportunities I love to take on. That when there's a technical unknown, that I just need to get together a smarter group of people to solve the technical problem because the market is there. And once the market is there, I can sell the shit out of anything.
Manny, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So good to be here. We finally did it.
Yes, finally. Great setup, by the way.
Thank you. We do this too.
Yes, I know. You have a great show. We actually saw a few of the episodes before in preparations for this, and I love the one you did for the fundraising announcement.
Thank you.
That was pretty real, I would say. That was pretty cool.
It got pretty real. We should. I got a lot of good commentary on that one. We probably should do it again.
Yes, that's awesome. Manny, let's go a bit back in the time machine. Before Outreach, before Paid, before all of this, you worked at your stepmother's shrimp farm in Ecuador. Tell me what a day on the farm was like. I guess, what did you do? What did you see?
So I actually tell this story to my kids when they go to bed. So whenever I'm putting my girls to bed and I ask them what story you want to hear, they always tell me a story about the shrimp farm. and the truth is, it's actually kind of boring because there's not a lot going on when you're growing shrimp. So there's two,
just waiting.
You just wait until they get fat, and then you take them out of the pool, and then you ship them to the place where they freeze them and send them to Costco. So it's and the way that the shrimp harvest is, like, all the farms, which are actually now, in retrospect, are now not the best environmental thing because they're right against I don't know how you call that, a manglar.
Yeah.
So you have these pools, and then what you do is you empty the pool back into the ocean, and you collect the shrimp in these baskets, and you load up these baskets in this pickup truck. So this line of pickup trucks come with ice chests in the back. And your job is to take the baskets out of the egress of the pool. You pick out the crabs that have gotten into the pool that eat the shrimp.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you call them. We call them jaivas. These are blue crabs. So you take the jaivas out. Try not to get pinched. So you have to grab them from the back.
Those are big ones, right?
Those are big. Yeah, exactly. They have been eating shrimp for the past 3 months, right? So these are big crabs. So you have to take out the crabs. You actually keep some of them to eat yourself. But the small ones, you throw them back in the ocean. And then you bring the shrimps into the back of the pickup truck and you dump it in the ice chest. And then they just go to the processing plant. And in the processing plant, they flash freeze them. They cut them in half, and they ship them to Costco, to Sam's Club, to restaurants and whatever. So that's the most exciting part, because you walk from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. when you're doing the harvest. And then you know how we are, right? So you finish the harvest and everybody just gets drunk. So by this point I'm 15, so I can't drink. You could, but you're not like this, not like the farm workers. And they're drinking cristal, right? So they're drinking really heavy stuff. So those are the two things that you do: you feed the shrimp, or you harvest.
But at some point, you decided to move to the U.S. How did that happen? What made you think you had to leave Ecuador?
So when in Guayaquil, back when I lived there, so there was two or one main technical university. It's called the ESPOL, Escuela Superior Politécnica del Litoral, and it's really hard to get in. So once you get in, you're very privileged that you're surrounded by these really smart people. But then you look at what do the graduates do, because it takes about 5 years to graduate, not 4. It takes 5 because it's harder. And you look at what they do, and they're doing customer support or field services for companies like SAP, Microsoft, Oracle, IBM, and they pay you well, but it's a boring life. You're supporting somebody else's software, or you're adapting software to factories or whatever, right? So you're doing installs or like you're driving in your little like company car over to like somebody's office to do like IT support. And I'm like, there's this fascinating world of computers, and like, this is what you do when you graduate. You're like, you do support, you do admin, you do things that did not look very interesting. So I was lucky that I had my professor of algorithms had studied in the U.S. and he studied in the same school where the president of Ecuador has studied in Stevens Tech, and they both start talking about what it's like to study in the U.S. And I was asking them, like, what are the jobs in the U.S. like? What do you do when you're there? And they're like, yeah, you program the things that you support here. I'm like, I want to be that. Like, I want to be the one who's building the software that people are supporting. I don't want to be support. So, I was pretty good with algorithms. I was pretty good in my class, and I had decent grades. And my dad got a job as an expat in Venezuela. And when he got the job, he all of a sudden said, hey, now we have a little bit more money. So now you can do two things. I can either buy you a car, or I can send you abroad to study. And it's funny, but
back when Venezuela was wealthy.
But this is before everything that happened in Venezuela happened. But this is, I don't know, for those who are Venezuelans who are listening to me, this is back when Venezuela had two parties, the Adecos and the Copellanos, and they just took turns, kind of like the Democrats and the Republicans here in the U.S. So, Venezuela was swimming in oil money. Everybody was driving big cars. I actually wanted to stay in Venezuela. I actually wanted to go to the Simón Bolívar. I don't know if you know this, but Venezuela has 5 Miss Universes, and there's a reason Venezuela has 5 Miss Universes. It's a beautiful country with beautiful people in it. And when you're 18 or 21, like you're very, very drawn to things like that. So I actually wanted to stay there, and my dad was like, no, you should really like go study somewhere else, or stay in Ecuador. So my dad, I had just recently broken up with my girlfriend, and I was in the period of my life where I just wanted to just go explore. Like, I don't want to stay here because I don't want to do those jobs. I want to build software where software comes from, and I wanted to be in this land where new things are created. In Venezuela, I wouldn't be able to do that either, because in Venezuela it's also more like a support place. So my dad had said, I don't know how long we're going to be able to pay for it. So the moment you get there, you're going to have to find ways to support yourself. We're going to pay 1 or 2 semesters, and then it's all you. So I found this school that had a co-op program where you can work 6 months. So you go to school for 2 semesters, and then you can work for 6 months, and then go to school 2 semesters. And in that interim period, you actually A, make money, and B, you get experience. So I took that job and immediately got, I started building software for a company in aerospace. So I was building the autopilot for the C-130, which is a cargo plane for the United Air Force. And I learned a lot about software and what it's like to ship software to production, specifically to harsh environments like the military. And I was just in love. I was eating it up. Like, I love every minute of it. I love the code. I love the people. I love the people who code. I love the people who are around me. And then I figured out a way to stay. I did TA jobs. I work in different places, and until I graduated.
The funniest thing is, when you arrived to the US, you didn't speak English. And now when somebody hears you, your English is pretty, pretty good. And I read that you learned it by reading The Economist. Why The Economist? Who gave you that idea?
No, so it was really hard the first 2 years, because I could read and I could understand sort of like technical concepts, but I could not go, again, at this point I'm 20, mm-hmm. and I couldn't hang out. I couldn't go out to bars and things like that. I didn't have enough vocabulary to express myself. Mm-hmm. So I found the whole experience really frustrating. And I'm like,
it's like, you're smart in Spanish, but damn in English, right?
I don't, dude, it was so hard because I'm really funny in Spanish. You know what I mean?
It's
in Spanish, I'm fucking hilarious. People love me. But in English, I'm not as funny. So
I feel you, yeah.
So I was a big deal, dude. And all of a sudden I moved to America, and I'm not my jokes don't land, and I just I don't sound witty and whatever. So I set out to I'm gonna be sound in English the way I sound in Spanish. So I was reading this book that is kind of like mandatory reading for anybody who wants to learn how to write in English, called Elements of Style by William Strunk. That if anybody that comes from a different language wants to write well in English, you have to you have to fucking read it, right? Mm-hmm. So I read that book, and then one of the areas in the book says that the easiest way to master the spoken language is to pick a style that you like. And because I wanted to, the moment I left Ecuador, I wanted to learn everything about the world economy and everything that was happening from the point of view of the outside, right? Not from, the press in our countries are very politicized. So they take a point of view that is very political, as opposed to just a broad, open point of view. And I felt like The Economist was a broad, open, global point of view about like what's going on in the world. So I was reading that a lot. And I enjoyed that reading. I was like, I'm gonna copy that style. I'm gonna sound like The Economist when I write. That will get me at least, far down the field when it comes to speaking, or at least writing in English. And then, that helped me learn vocabulary. So the thing that I didn't mention is that once I came out of college and I got a job, I will read the Wall Street Journal every day, and I will find 5 words that I didn't know, and I will memorize them. And I did that for like a year. So every day I would memorize 5 words, and that helped me build the vocabulary. Once you have vocabulary and you have structure, then you can speak really fast. So now I'm back to being myself, right? Like, as in Spanish, I speak really fast and really funny, etc. But now I can be really fast and really funny, and with a broader vocabulary in English. And that took me about a year.
That's such a great idea. So let's go into Outreach. Outreach was one of the great B2B software successes of the past decade. I mean, you build a pretty sizable business, 1,000 employees. I think you had 6,000 enterprise customers last time I read. And you sort of created this category of sales engagement, or was one of the protagonists of that category. But then the world changed in 2023. AI came out, BC started drying, and it forced a lot of successful SaaS companies to basically start rethinking themselves as businesses, because a lot of them had been funded a lot, probably above what they should have raised.
Yeah.
And then that brought cost reductions, layoffs, and probably especially a new wave of AI that sort of started rewriting the rules of the game.
Yep.
I'm curious, what impact did that have on Outreach? What tough decisions did you have to make?
Well, there's a lot of questions in there, so let me pull it apart. So what happened was that, once COVID created this massive demand for seats, for anything that was a digital way of doing anything, selling, including one of them. And so we grew very fast during COVID, and then interest rates went up, and then the business started contracting. They didn't need as many people anymore. And we started seeing that in the renewals. We started seeing that we also started seeing that in the competitive environment, that, people became far more price sensitive. We didn't move up market as fast as we should. So we had a ton of deals in the mid-market that were especially affected by the end of ZIRP. And, we were fairly exposed to tech. So like in 2021, we had an 80% of our market was tech or VC-backed companies. So the way out of that problem was not easy. The way out of that problem is to sell more to non-tech companies that are more stable and have more seats. The problem is those sales cycles are really long, A, and B, is that they were slowly changing their ways in which they sold. So like Outreach is a workflow platform for demand generation, for managing deals, for managing forecasting, for managing AEs, or like AEs managing their book of business. And so there is some amount of like behavioral change that you have to do to go from whatever you're using before, which is usually just a CRM, to using a CRM plus a workflow. So in tech, everybody just snaps into whatever is new, right? But in non-tech, it takes a little bit longer. And the way out for us is to like sell to non-tech tech. And that took, everybody's still going through it. But that's the only way to build a durable business, is to like, you sort of sell a ton to to other tech companies, but eventually you have to make this hop, this kind of like
The jump.
this chasm jumping into the large economy, which is mainstream companies. And when you do that, and how you do that, and how fast you do that, will determine, the durability of the revenue that you make. And we sort of were doing that, but we're, when ZERP ended, we're like in the process of doing that. So we were hit just like everybody else. But now we're back into the same road of like, okay, so we got to get selling outside of tech. And once you start selling outside of tech, you can build a company that is big and viable and very durable.
That's fascinating. I had never heard about that idea, but it makes total sense, right? Tech, by definition, is very early adopter, which is not the case of this other industry.
But it's a good way to like find like the early product market fit and like get some revenue traction. The problem is, and everybody has this problem, by the way, and this is if anybody is out there listening to this advice, is that yes, go find your early customers. They're all going to be tech, sell the hell out of it there, but immediately keep an eye on like, what is the large durable revenue, equation? Like, where are you going to land and stick the landing in such a way that you're not, so depending on tech? Like Salesforce had the same problem. Salesforce almost died, in the first bursting of the bubble in 2001. But, they were well-financed enough to like, jump out of that and start selling into much larger companies and eventually, be the company that it is right now. So everyone is caught in the same boat. And like everyone who's surviving and thriving right now is like making that move. Is selling, now in this case, agents, and is selling the agents outside of the core tech market where they sold originally.
Yep, totally. And I actually heard the CEO, founder of Canva, explaining a similar idea applied to the Creative Suite and all the AI tools.
Right.
Something that also happens in parallel in the middle of this reinvention is AI. LLMs coming out, at least ChatGPT coming out in 2023. And I heard you describing this situation where a CEO that was a customer asks you, if you're now building these AI agents, should I just hire fewer people next year? I guess, what did that moment told you about the future of software?
That was my aha moment. That's when I realized that there needs to be, it's sort of like taking the red pill in the Matrix. Like that's when you realize that everything is not what not what it looks like. And that, so this customer was DocuSign, and the person I was talking to was Alan Thigginson, the CEO. And he's a very smart dude. He's a very visionary dude. And his question was right. Like, you don't have to squint to see the fact that agents will eventually get to a point in which, even if it's not replacing a full human being, it's replacing vast amounts of the work that they're doing. So by definition, you will need fewer of them to do exactly the same work. So his question was just pretty open and honest, saying, clearly, we're in the middle of the story is we're in the middle of this renewal cycle, right? So I have the team is selling, up and down the organization, training the new products that we're selling, and we're looking for an expansion on the renewal. And when we come to when I was talking to the CEO, I was like, why do I need to expand when I may not need as many more seats next year? So I'm like, okay, so fine, we can attach the agents to the seats that you have. But like, what ends up happening is that the
precipitates that even more, right? If you have agents,
right, and you can't make up for the seat loss with agent attached. And that's number one. Number two, it's like the moment you get to procurement, they're going to grind you down in price anyway. So having anything attached to a seat was clearly the wrong approach. You see what I mean? Because seats are getting compressed by two things, right? Seats are getting compressed by the fact that there's fewer people doing the same work, and procurement is grinding you out on the fact that if the seat has low usage, they just won't renew it because they're not getting the value for it. So like if you're charging, like we were charging, I don't know, like $90, $100 per seat per month. And they were saying, look, this bottom 10% of MAU adoption is not getting $100 a month worth of value. So why am I going to renew the seat? So you get the bottom 10% removed, and the top line growth is not happening because they're not hiring anymore. So now you have a perfect storm, right? And the agents that you're attaching to the seats that you already have, they're going to be like, well, I'll pay you $1 for it. I'm like, that doesn't make up for the fact that I lost my expansion opportunity at the top and my renewal in the base that I already had at the bottom. So that's when I realized that we have to think about the whole thing differently. And frankly, like there's $300 billion of SaaS out there that is in the same boat. And whoever moves first is the one who's going to win. So like when I looked at my customers right now that are coming from SaaS and looking into turning into agents, they are the early ones who are seeing this problem coming, and they're saying, look, man, like we got to move before the market moves on us. But there is still like the vast majority of 85% of SaaS who's still sitting pretty under seat-based pricing. And you're just thinking, maybe you just attach some credits to my agents, we're going to be good. Bro, you're not going to be good. You got to be flat. I feel like I'm John the Baptist here, just walking around like a crazy person, just telling everybody that the world is coming to an end. But it's not quite happening yet.
So I'm curious, and I think this is the perfect segue into the paid thesis. Most human workers are paid for their time, not necessarily for the results. I think there's probably some jobs where some significant portion of the compensation is tied to outcomes, but not most. If we start thinking about agents as workers, why should AI? I think there's probably some jobs where some significant portion of the compensation is tied to outcomes, but it's not most jobs. So if we start thinking about agents as workers, why should the AI economy? So if we start thinking about agents as workers, why should the AI economy be any different from the real economy?
I think that it should and it shouldn't. So let's take a step back. You pay for time. So if you track how do we get to paying for time, it's because you wanted longer hours and the worker wanted to get paid for the time, the longer hours they were working, right? So you work 7 hours, you get paid for the 7 hours. You work 10 hours, you get paid for the 10 hours. And then that went away. We were not paid for time anymore. We are paid a fixed amount. So all white-collar workers don't get paid for time. They get paid a fixed amount. And what they do is that they get an upside for results, right? They get bonuses, they get MBOs, they own stock in the company, which makes them, allows them to make more money when things go well. So in the ideal world, you want to align as much as you can to outcomes. The problem is, white-collar workers got to a point in which they're just pushing things around and you don't know what the outcome is because the outcomes are all intermediate things. So as you create this sort of like intermediate value for like outcomes, right? Like, oh, you run 3 reports. So that's a good outcome. I expected 2. You did 3. Great. But you have no idea what's up worth.
OKRs.
Correctly. So you have OKRs. You have we start contorting ourselves into these different metrics.
Proxies on top of proxies.
Proxies on top of proxies, like to proxy the outcome. When in reality, we just want the economic outcome. So like in the capitalist system, you have a pool of capital and you want to pay for production of the outcome that you expect. And because the white collar work is so complex that we were never able to get to the final outcome, so we created all these other like in between things. Well, that's changing, right? And so the agent is now able to produce the outcome way faster than the human. So time doesn't make any sense anymore, right? So then what measure do you apply to the production value of what the agent is doing? So you start with what is the equivalent of the human being doing the same thing, right? So like, let's say that you are an AI SDR and you're AI SDR and you produce and you send 10 emails. You can pay for 10 and sending 10 emails will take you like 2 minutes, right? Whereas a human being will take 2 hours or like an hour. So now you can create equivalence, right? Like, so, you can pay me, 20% of the hour it took you. So if an SDR is making, the equivalent of $20, $30 an hour, you just pay me 20% of that, so pay me $6, right? Or you can start moving the goal down to where it matters, right? So you don't care about emails sent, you care about emails replied. You care about emails replied positively, or you care about meetings booked from that email reply. So now you start moving into closer to the value creation activity as opposed to the work. And at the end of the day, you don't even care about that. You care about the revenue, right? The problem is an attribution problem. So the paying for the outcome is nirvana when it comes to, a capitalist system. You put some money, you want to pay for the outcome that you got. So when a plumber shows up in your house to fix a leak, if the dude leaves without fixing the leak, you're not going to pay him. You see what I mean? You still have the leak, right? So whereas, now it gets tricky, right? If a plumber shows up and he fixes a leak in 5 minutes, and another person shows up and fixes a leak in 5 hours, you are willing to pay the 5 hours way more than the one that fixed it in 5 minutes because you spend more time on it, even though the output is the same.
Yes.
And so this is where we have this something called the effort heuristic. that we associate value to the effort that it took. But in reality, we all need to start moving into putting value into the outcome. What is that worth to you? But right now, we're not quite there yet. So what we do is we pay dollars for the effort. And the best way to pay dollars for the effort is to say a human being would have taken this much to do the effort, to do the work. Let's capture some of that. That's where agents are at in general right now.
Before getting deeper into Paid's thesis and product, I'd love to touch a bit on, I guess, your reinvention process. I think it's fascinating because it happened both at the outreach level as a business. Outreach is the seed for Paid's idea, but it also happened at a personal level for you as a founder. And Kaushik, one of your investors, told me when you pitched them Paid, everyone was expecting another SaaS. But then you talked to them about AI as if you were a 21-year-old AI native. And they said, we have to invest right now. Otherwise, we're not going to see this company ever again. I'm curious, first, what does AI native mean to you? Or how did you change as you went from outreach into Paid?
That's a really good question. So it's funny that Kaushik said that because Kaushik was my second meeting when I was pitching Paid. My first meeting was with another firm here in London. And I walked in, I did the pitch, and they gave me all the reasons why AI agent was a fad and will never work. And I looked at them and I told them, I'm gonna walk out of this room and you'll never see me again. And I did. I walked out of the room and they never fucking saw them again. And you know, the moment Paid got hot, like they started calling me, they wanted to come visit, like the Paid partner called me and like blah, 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 and like all these other things. I'm like, no. You get one shot at Manny and then he's gone. So Kaushik did great by locking the door and finishing the conversation. I think that for me, it was more the fact that I lived the problem in my own skin. And the problem like truly bothered me. And the reason that it bothered me is because at Outreach, I was paying a number of applications, a ton of money. I was paying Zora a ton of money, Salesforce Building a ton of money. I was paying NetSuite a ton of money to prevent me from solving the problem. You know, I was feeling that they were
Conspiring against you?
stealing my money. They were conspiring against me. They were working against me, for me. You see what I mean? So like, I feel like they're like the status quo was not just a status quo. The status quo was my enemy. You see what I mean? That was like in my face, laughing, taking money out of my pocket and taunting me. You know what I mean? Like, you can't do anything about it because we're a system of record. You can't do shit. And like, you have to use me. IT was not going to do anything. Your CFO is not going to do anything. So watch me. And I'm like, oh, no. I can't live like this. So it's like they punch me in the mouth, right? And like, once you have that taste of blood in your mouth, like you want to come back and fight. Yeah. And you know, once you have that inspiration, that drive, you go deep. You know what I mean? You promise yourself that you'll never get punched in the mouth again and you're going to go fix the world, right? Not for myself, but for everybody else who don't want to get punched in the mouth by these current vendors who are just taking the money out of your pocket and telling you that it's going to be okay. So what the true sort of like realization, so like the story was that, you know, we moved to London, and then, you know, my wife is telling me to take some time off to, you know, think about what I wanted to do. And, you know, I started looking at some other CEO jobs and I didn't find them interesting. And I didn't want to be an administrator or like whatever. And every, you know, if you take a CEO job of like a, you know, $50, $100 million company, like they're broken in different ways. You just don't know where, you know what I mean? Like the culture may be fucked, or like the product may be screwed, or like there's something else that you just don't know. And I'm like, I can't do this. And like, they give you like 6% of the equity of the company, and like, and then you have to like leave it on the field for them. And like, I don't want to do that job. So like, my wife tells me to like, go visit a friend. He's like, you haven't seen your friends in like years. So just pick a friend and go visit them. So one of my high school friends lives in San Sebastian in Spain. And I haven't seen him in like 10 years. So I call him. He's like, hey, man, like, I want to come see you. So I go see him, and like I land. And then the day after I land, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember like I remember where I was in San Sebastian that morning when a Strawberry released. I don't know if you remember that. Strawberry was, I think it was ChatGPT 4.0.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you have reasoning as an agentic behavior. Reasoning means that you can give somebody a very long problem and you can let the LLM go and figure it out. So to me, that was sort of like the missing link, right? Like before you were doing all this like, sentence completions. Now you can go like deep into the rat, like now the model can go deep into a rat hole and come back with like fairly important information that is akin to thinking. So now you have the execution part of like doing fast tasks and you have the thinking task. So now you have like system 1 and system 2 of like, doing something fast because you want to autocomplete an email, you want to, review a document, but you also have the engine that is doing conjectures and hypothesizing and coming up with like new answers that didn't exist before. And that like the moment you see that, you cannot unsee it, right? Like the moment that happens, now you have the semblance of a human mind. And the moment you have a semblance of a human mind in a white collar job, that changes everything. So like I like stopped and like I couldn't like stop thinking about it. And all the implications of what happens when agents, behave like human beings and can think and can create strategies and can solve relatively complex problems. So that was for me the big aha moment, and how I went down the rabbit hole. As a matter of fact, when I raised the pre-seed, I didn't have a solution for how we're gonna implement Paid in such a way that it can capture the value of what the agent is doing and monetize it correctly. All I knew was that the systems currently were not gonna solve it.
Yeah.
And you needed something else to solve that problem. And like in between those two, there was a technical unknown. So I didn't, in my mind, there was no market risk. The world will move in this direction of, white collar work becoming mostly agentic. And there is no way back. Like the cat is out of the bag and there's no way back. But to be able to capture the value and show the value and measure the cost and do all the things that you need to do from a business perspective hasn't been invented yet. So in my mind, we had a technical problem with a market that was, in my mind, set and ready to go. So whenever I see that, that's the kind of opportunities I love to take on. That when there's a technical unknown, that I just need to get together a smarter group of people to solve the technical problem because the market is there. And once the market is there, I can sell the shit out of anything. But once we figure out the technical solution, it's just a matter of assembling the right team.
I'd love to quickly double click on the technical solution. And let me give an example. You mentioned the AI SDR doing outbound sales, for example. And I mean, you hire it and they promise you, 100 meetings a month. But going back to what we were discussing before, the agent doesn't clock in, right? Nor does it have a manager watching over it and what is it doing. And you guys built this technology that sort of tries to understand what an agent does, almost like getting inside its head. What does that mean in practice? How do you technically measure an agent's work?
That was the technology. That was the technology unlock. Is that bringing it down to like normal speak. So what is that you want to do? You want to measure what the agent is doing so that you can assign a price to it. You can monetize it, and you can also measure its cost, right? So that's how you create sort of like the economic value of what the agent is doing. So what is that what you have available? So you have seats available. That doesn't work. And then the other thing that you have is this API system. So like Stripe or Orb or Metronome, where you can like insert a line of code somewhere in the software and count things, right? You count how many rows were written or write, or how many rows to write or read, or how many API calls were made, or how many of this one thing happened. But that doesn't work either, right? Because the agent is doing a bunch of other tasks. So you're going to have to insert this one line of code, like all these different places, and measure it. So like that's a pain in the ass. And the third thing is that once you have a brain, like once you have the concept of a brain and a bunch of tools, then you have to understand what everything that is happening in the agent, the tool calling, what is the brain thinking, what is the cost of the brain thinking, right? So you may want to capture the number of tokens that were used, but what if the tokens are reasoning tokens or like OCR tokens or like a different type of token? And then the cost is different. And they usually, when something is expensive, it probably means that it's very high value add. So we needed a solution that was able to see everything that the agent is doing and then interpret what the agent was doing. And that's where we came out. And so that was a technical problem, right? I didn't know how to solve it. But at Outreach, I had met this guy called Ben Siegelman. Ben Siegelman was one of the founders of an open source framework called OpenTelemetry. And the reason I engaged Ben Siegelman at Outreach was because he had a product called Lightstep that was supposed to replace for me Datadog. I was paying almost $7 million a year to Datadog, and I wanted to stop paying $7 million to Datadog. So I wanted to find an alternative solution to Datadog. And this guy sold me the idea that by instrumenting OpenTelemetry, I can get the same value from it. So, because I was so obsessed with like not paying Datadog $7 million, I dove deep into what OpenTelemetry did. And so like had that in the back of my head. And like once I found this problem with agents, I was like, that's it. OpenTelemetry can solve this problem. You see what I mean? I just didn't know exactly how to do it. So once we assembled a team here at Outreach, we started playing with OpenTelemetry and like how does and the way that OpenTelemetry works is OpenTelemetry decorates a code, and then it looks at the egress of the code and it captures it and puts it into a database and neatly into a database. And like the thing that OpenTelemetry does is that it allows you to create spans in which you can see what the agent is doing. So you can say the agent is executing all this task, the agent is executing a read of a document, or is making a call for support, or is responding a query, or is looking up a return information or a warranty information, right? And you can also put the span over here and see like all the calls that it's doing to the LLM to solve this problem. So now you have like the tracer here, and then you can just like create an itemized list of what the agent is doing, the cost and the value. So the technology breakthrough that we did is that now we can interpret the egress of OpenTelemetry into what the agent is doing and then assign a value to it. You see what I mean? But it all began with the fact that we can observe the agent doing it. And what happens is that as you change the agent code and you make it smarter, you change the models, you make it more efficient, you add some tool calling, you don't have to change the decoration. So you can just put the decorator once and boom, you're done, right? You can change the agent as many times as you want. So you don't have to put API calls everywhere across the agent. You can just decorate it once and you're good to go. The moment you see that, that's the technological breakthrough that you need. And you just make it easier to use, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we did here at Paid.
That's fascinating. Now, it's interesting because when you describe the cost tracking side of things, it sounds more objective. When you talk about the value, you talk about interpreting the value.
Yes.
And then, I guess, in the end, understanding what the agent does is one thing. Convincing a company or the customer that it's valuable in X amount of money, and going one step further, that you can actually replace part of your human budget with agents is another thing, right? So I'm curious, how do you build this trust layer where both sides, your customer, who is the agent provider, but also its own customers, their own customers, agree on what this work is worth?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and what you can't get somebody to agree to trust. What you have to do is you have to show evidence that the work was being done, and then show some parameters of what the work is worth, right? So what we do is we empower agent builders, whether they're SaaS companies at scale building agents and monetizing them, or entrepreneurs building agents for their startup, is to show the customer what the agent actually did. And like a tally of literally what the agent did.
A receipt in a sense.
Exactly. No, but it's different in that when you sell a seat of software, for instance, you don't have to show what the seat did. Nobody comes and say, hey, what did you do with my seat?
You're right.
You know what I mean? Whereas where you hire an agent to do the work, you have to show what the agent did. So the agent did 20 queries, the agent created this data pipelines, the agent reviewed this many documents, the agent solved this many cases. You see what I mean? So you have to, like, in outcome-based pricing, there's a concept of challenging an outcome. So you need to show the outcome so the outcome can be challenged. If the outcome is not acceptable, you don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
That's one. The second piece is that you want to show what the agent did, because if you are selling the agent against open headcounts, you're saying, hey, you don't have to hire this 10 data engineers. You have open headcount for 10 data engineers right now. You only need 5, right? Because the agent is going to take care of the other 5. So how do you quantify that? Oh, well, a data engineer sets up 20 pipelines a month, and that's as many data quality reviews every month, and it has it creates this other it resolves as many tickets per month. You can show the same value. You can like put that into a box and say, okay, so I'm going to sell you a data engineer. This is what the engineers was doing previously. This is what the data engineer is doing right now, and now you have a data engineer in a box. You see what I mean? So the idea is that we empower agent builders to capture the value fully for what the agent is doing. So they don't have to dip into the tools cost. They don't have to go into the IT budget that what they were doing before, but they can go into the headcount budget. You see what I mean? Or they can actually get closer to the outcome and charge a piece of the outcome. So if the agent for whatever reason, this doesn't exist yet, but like let's say that an AI AE, right, is all of a sudden closing, deals. How much do you pay an AE right now? You pay him, 10 to 15% of the revenue they generate. So what if the agent charges 7% per revenue generated? What if the agent is doing upsells and instead of paying an AE 15% of the revenue, you pay the agent 7% of the revenue? That's a massive win for both parties. So like we are unlocking the ability to capture more value for our customers. That's our premise, is that by understanding what the agent is doing, we unlock all this value generation and capture for the agent builder.
I guess your thesis is that that's the missing link for this idea that agents will be a market that's 10x bigger than SaaS because you can now capture salaries. You were not able to do that because you couldn't prove the work, in a sense.
Right. In the past, you were beholden by the number of, warm bodies on a seat. Now you don't have to. Now you're beholden by the size and ambition of the one operating the agents.
What factors could play against that reality? The idea that agents will be a market 10x bigger than SaaS?
I don't think it's a matter of playing against it. I think it's a matter of timing.
Okay.
Just like everything else, I feel like not even 1% of that market is available right now. I think you're seeing a lot of, because we are all in the echo chamber of the valley. We hear all this. Right. Everybody's blowing up, and if you're not 0 to 50 million in like 2.5 weeks, you're not worth anything.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So like, I feel like the noise needs to subside a little bit in letting the work, the honest agents work, take on and be developed.
Wait for the shrimps to grow.
Exactly. You have to just wait for the shrimps to grow. People are in this gold rush of capturing, of finding more gold. You're seeing agents being shipped too early. You're seeing pilots falling on its face because, the knowledge about the workflows in the industry are not right. I think we're going to see two steps into agent adoption. One is the agent is going to do the work currently as it stands, just better and faster. But eventually what will happen within enterprises or agent buyers is that they're going to change how they do the work completely, right? And they're going to adopt new ways of doing work that are available because of agents. So that second step hasn't happened yet, and that'll probably take 5 years. Well, the first step we're going to be seeing is a straight up, taking open headcount out of the equation and letting the agent operate and keeping the humans operating. I'm also seeing, I don't know if you saw this, a study that for the age group of like 20 to 25 years old, employment is down 13%. Yes. So what I'm seeing right now is that there will be this social tension of the early in career worker is not going to find a job as easily as we thought. And now we're going to have to, and they may end up benefiting society, right? Like in which people, there is not going to be enough demand for English majors and poetry majors and social study majors or whatever the hell. And you're going to actually have to do some craft that is worth paying for that cannot be done by an agent. So for instance, I have my son, he never was like a pure computer guy. He was more like, he liked to, do things with his hands. So like his first big purchase when he had money was a MIG welder. So he's been like in the making things for a long time. And, he just got a job at TerraPower making nuclear reactors. So that's going to take a little bit of time to be fully agentized because, you can't screw up a uranium plant. You know what I mean? Like that has bigger consequences. So like I feel like there's going to be some jobs that are going to be around and going to thrive, and some others is just not going to be available. And I think, as usual, the U.S. is such an adaptable market that but in the meantime, we're going to see a lot of social unrest.
If everything goes right, Paid becomes the sort of infrastructure for the agent economy. And I can imagine eventually you could even become like an agent marketplace where companies can find specialized agents, negotiate prices, pay for outcomes. It's literally like, like a fruit market, but for agents, right? If that happens, what changes? Not just for companies, but for how we work, how we value work in this age of AI.
I think that what we're not seeing right now in the narrative is that the work that needs to happen is very, very, very specific. And it's really hard to create a marketplace when the work is that specific. So for instance, let's say for a minute, I have a customer that is an agent for mortgages, right? And this agent is able to take an inbound call and they take a family and take them through the process of 675 fields and pools of data from different sources, all the way to a mortgage that then turns into a securitizable, mortgage that you can put into and sell as a security. And the kind of work that the agent that is very specific to home mortgages in the US, you see what I mean? And there is all these different data types that it has to be able to accommodate to be able to do it. And we think that this work is generalizable of like, oh, okay, if you do residential mortgages, I'm sure you can do commercial mortgages. And if you do commercial mortgages, I'm sure you can do commercial insurance or homeowners insurance. No, not quite. We're not quite there yet. So like the knowledge is not generalizable. The knowledge is very specific and very domain specific. And the more domain specific you are, the more advanced you have in that market. You see what I mean? So the next 10 years, I think, you're going to see a proliferation of these very specific agents that do very specific work. And what I'm excited about is that it allows
like
somebody who knows
verticalized.
like it's like thinly verticalized, right? And I think that's good news because I want to live in a world that has a lot more millionaires. That I want to have the opportunity to be spread out. I mean, the reason I moved to the US is because there is opportunity for all of us, right? Like the countries that we come from, like you have to be of the right name and go to the right school and be associated with the right people to even have a shot at goal. Here, like you just need to have a good idea and have enough grit and drive to get it over the line. And I like that to be the case for everyone. Like I want any agent builder in any industry with an insight to just go get it done. And like you may not be a VC backed or you may not be a billionaire, but you will make a lot of money. And you'll be very happy doing what you do, and you'll employ other people that will help you get there. So that's what I'm excited about is that for the next foreseeable future and the way that agents are built right now, the knowledge is not super generalizable, which is actually not bad. It's actually pretty good because, the whole world could be retransformed into this agent workforce that will make other, agent builders a lot of that.
It sounds like it would be the new type of agency business. Everyone can start it. Everyone can make money with it.
Exactly.
Manny, thank you so much for doing this. It was super fun. I hope to see you soon.
Yeah. Thank you for everything.